all for being here today. I know this is a last minute call, but as you know, we have the elections coming up, and if we can place some of these bylaw amendments on the elections, then that's what this discussion is for, to determine what the next steps are. I'm going to officially start the board meeting. It's 9:03, and I'm going to have Blanca do the roll call, and then Robert, from there, if you can, I thought maybe you could give a recap. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at the YouTube video of the bylaw committee's meeting, but it was very helpful. But if you can give a recap of the amendments that we're considering, that would be great. So Blanca, take it away.
Unmute.
Unmute, Blanca.
Yeah.
I think Blanca might be
Sorry,
frozen.
sorry about that. Hello? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was in a document. So I'm just starting with Hugo Balta. I know he's not here, but Hugo Balta, not present. Nick Valencia. Yvette Cabrera.
Here.
Nancy San Martin.
Present.
Geraldine Coles.
Here.
Ben Gomez, which I know will be here later. Rafael Mejia. Roberto Hernandez. Steve Solis.
Here.
Oh, sorry. Somehow I skipped down to Steve Solis. Monica Castillo. Monica, not here. Melissa Macaya. Okay. Elwin Lopez. No. Nanette Sosa. Okay, Blanca Rios, I'm here. Johnny Cordova.
Presente.
Christy Fajardo.
Here.
Okay. Angélica Serrano.
Presente.
Román, perdón. Y creo que son todos, ¿no? Thank you.
How many-
Blanca, I'm not a voting member, but I should be a part of the roll call. So Alberto Mendoza here.
Oh, sorry, Alberto. Anybody else guessed? Should we say the names of the committee too, or?
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. What's the total present, Blanca?
No, sorry. 1, 2, 3. 8 voting members.
Okay, so we don't have a quorum right
We don't
now.
have quorum. I just texted Melissa and Monica. So
Okay. So I think we can, Alberto, can we move forward with Robert sort of giving us the background to bring us up to speed, and then obviously we're going to have to wait on a vote until we get the other members.
how many more people do we
11.
need for quorum? 11?
Yes.
Okay. So Monica and Melissa's connecting, sorry. I don't know about Monica.
Okay. All right. So yes, Robert, can you introduce all the committee members? That would be great. And then the background.
Sure. So joining us in the committee is Arelis Hernandez, Barbara Rodriguez, Cristina Silva, Dino Kieki, Geraldine Coles Azucar, Kildy Ortiz, Luis Joel Mendez Gonzalez, McNelly Torres, and Will Cruz. And I am the chair of the bylaws committee that was formed on the heels of the election incident and discussion there. There was a great upswell of membership that wanted to be involved. And so 2 committees were formed. One was the election committee and one is the bylaws committee. The bylaws committee began meeting in mid-June and met almost every Saturday at this time, coincidentally. Since then, we have had, our approach has been to be transparent and inclusive. So while we had some thoughts on the priorities, we sent a survey to the members to understand what their priorities might be to guide us on how we set these things up. We had lots of participation in that. From the list of priorities that came in, we as a committee thought, okay, there's stuff that we can do this year, and there are bigger, complex things that we don't want to rush into that we are going to take on after this election cycle. So please know that the goal or the committee is going to continue, and you are more than welcome to join and participate in the committee. I only ask that you consistently participate. But I will not be chairing the committee post the election because I won't be on the board. But there are 3 or so members on this committee that are running for it as well. Let's see. So after that, we decided to focus on 3 categories, which is the student representative, the elections, and transparency. That's what we're focusing on this election cycle. After we came up with drafts, we've been in consultation with our pro bono lawyer who's guided us in language, given us some context. We are incorporated in DC, and so there are some things that is the minimum of incorporation for DC, and we wanted to, we talked it out some things that we as an organization, we as a membership, we are proposing we would want in our bylaws. We then gave a public presentation to the members in the town hall, and also created another Google form for people to submit their thoughts, questions, concerns, that we then took into account the notes that we took from the town hall as we gathered together and finalized the language that we then sent to the board mid-September. I didn't feel appropriate for me to say, like, this is what we should do next, so waited for leadership there. There was discussion about whether we should just vote in email or we should vote in person. We actually had a board meeting scheduled, but it got postponed. This discussion was going to be on that meeting that is postponed, I think October 1st. But we decided that a discussion was important, so we called an emergency meeting on Thursday to allow us to discuss, and in realizing that we wanted to discuss, the proposal of, like, let's make this public to the membership came up. So that's why there was short notice there in announcing that. But for today, here's some things, the rules of engagement that I would like to propose. First, the goal for this meeting is to present to the board, again, the bylaw proposals to address any questions and concerns from the board. The board will vote on the concepts of the proposals to put them onto the ballot. That doesn't mean it is the bylaw amendment is approved at all. I do want to remind the board members, whether you vote for this or not, even if you disagree with it, what you're voting on is, should the members vote on this proposal? That's what you're focusing on today. You as a member, and this is to the membership attending, you as a member, use your voice to decide whether or not you agree or disagree with this proposed amendment. We need 2/3 of the voting membership to make any one of these proposed changes to take effect into our bylaws. We have found that the ballot work tool is pretty basic, meant for, like, do you vote for this person or this person type of format. So Yana has been trying to make it work, and we are proposing that the ballot be simplified in these ways. That we put the proposed language of the section, right? So for the student section, proposed language on top, the current bylaw language of the relevant sections below. This is if Janet says it's possible, by the way. We think it is, but it's not been 100% approved. And underneath that, a link to the current bylaws, and perhaps if we have room, a link to the public document, which I put in the chat. So you know what, I'm gonna put it in for those who came in late. You can click on this. This is the public document we've been working on. At the very bottom of it, you'll see some notes from past town halls, past agendas. At the top, there's a proposed agenda. You see who's a part of the board. And then the language, we color-coded all this stuff to make it simple, but that color coding does not translate to the ballot. So in addition to the proposed, current links to bylaws, what we're proposing people vote on is the concept that we're proposing. For example, the lawyer said that the student rep can vote on boarding matters, but it was clearly not clear enough. So we are proposing that we reaffirm that a student representative can vote on all board matters. So that is the concept, and you will vote as a member, yes or no. Again, this is what we're proposing our ballot be. Yannis will let us know if it is not possible or not, but we want to simplify it as much as possible. Plus, let's also be frank, when we get a bunch of editors in the room, we're going to discuss what about that word choice. And so that can happen, especially in alignment, even more so with the lawyer, but the concepts are what matter most. We've done, I think, a really fantastic job, and not me, but this committee has done a really fantastic job in, debating concepts and proposing language and discussing these ideas and being really, really, really fantastic. So I thank the committee for their work. I see Yannis, and hopefully she is okay with the idea. We'll discuss the next steps afterwards. But for right now, Yvette, I can move on to presenting to the concepts to the board, or do we need more board folks to join?
So
us?
I want to acknowledge that Melissa Macaya and Finn Gomez have entered the meeting as well.
So we need one more person, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Robert, why don't you go ahead? And also, if you can, in discussing the amendments, and the committee members should feel free to speak up here.
Yes.
I'm interested in hearing about the urgency for each amendment, and if it should be placed on this election or if it can wait for the next board. Because as we bring up questions, if there are any changes that need to be made, I don't want the committee to feel rushed. So I want to hear from the committee as to what they feel is the urgency for each individual amendment. But go ahead.
Sure. So we'll present in sections, and I'll have the head of the subcommittee take those on. One thing I'll disclose, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn out of the committee, but we feel that these sections and everything in them, we don't feel rushed in them. Unless the board brings something that we don't expect, we feel like we've really discussed these things. The stuff that we don't want to rush, we put on for the next cycle. But I feel fairly strongly that we feel confident about these proposals. And nothing has indicated to us that that we're compromising or rushing. But I'm sharing my screen with everybody. You have the document in the chat with you. If not, if you don't have it, say it in the chat and someone will paste it in there. But this is our public working document. We have a link to the current bylaws, I believe from 2018 there. Our committee members, this is an agenda I just wrote up for today. The first section we're gonna tackle is the student membership. Just to kind of let you know our color coding system. Yellow is the current language. Blue and blue italics is what we are, blue italics underlined is what we're editing or propose changing. Again, the ballot doesn't allow for this. So what we're gonna do is put the proposed language and then the current language and then the concepts underneath, right? So here, Joel Luis, do you want to talk about these things, or do you want me to kind of pop them in there?
Yes, today it's going to talk Arelis because I talked in the town hall and I really want to hear her opinion because she was the journalist with Will, who worked in the student committee. And I just wanted to note that as a curious fact, the person who were in the students committee were both professional journalists, Arelis and Will. I was the only student. So that means a lot, and that's why I want to already speak a little bit.
Great.
Thanks.
Arelis?
Okay. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday morning. Geez. But so this concept of the student member, I think there's been some back and forth as to whether the student member could vote or couldn't vote. I mean, that's beside the point at this point, right? It's that we want to affirm, we want to say definitively that the student representative does in fact have the right to vote on board matters. Students, as we took a poll, represents 30% of our membership. And they're a huge part of our organization. Now, we are not, and we heard this from members, we are not a student organization, we are a journalist organization. I would argue that students are journalists. In fact, there are students, full-time students or not full-time students, that have more experience in some cases as some professional journalists, and they are working as professional journalists. I think it behooves us in terms of enfranchisement to make sure that student members, student representatives, excuse me, have a voice in this process, considering how large their membership is and how much they contribute to our organization and how much of our program actually goes to them as well. And so the language here is pretty basic. We are basically enfranchising the student member unequivocally by saying they have the right to vote the way that the rest of the board has a right to vote. And we took out the qualifier of full-time study, considering, again, the demographics of our students who go to community college or who are not able to afford to go to schools full-time, but have a demonstrated interest in journalism. To be able to run as student representative, you have to qualify as a student member. So I think that was one of the concerns that was brought forward by our membership. And just for the record, as it exists right now, only students can vote for the student representative. And so if someone were to run for student representative and, had feigned some details of their studentness, that would be up to the selection of the student member. Excuse me, the student members to make that determination. Democracy, right?
Actually, let me interrupt. Before that step, the election committee vets the members running for that position. So that's where that first step comes in. And then the voting membership, in this case, the student demographic, votes and decides who they want to represent them.
Exactly. Again, just to wrap up, this is merely enfranchising the language here for student representatives to be able to be a full member of the board of directors of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists.
And then the next section underneath, as we discussed this idea, we felt, so that's concept one, right? So if we have, if board members have joined us and we can take a vote on whether or not this can be on the ballot, this would be a great time to do this concept, or at least address any questions to that concept before we move on to the next concept. How about that? Which is, as a student member, we want to empower you to vote on more things. But let's address that first one. Does any member have any question about that concept? Student rep vote?
I mean, I don't know how the other board
Robert,
members. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask, because maybe I misunderstood this, but are you saying that if a student is a part-time student, they could become a member?
That they can run for the office. So let me ask, and I swear to you, I'm not trying to be rude,
No.
but let's have board members ask the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I misunderstood.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
I apologize.
Forgive me. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. But feel free to put that in the chat and encourage a board member to ask that question.
I get it. I get it. I'm
yeah,
so sorry, Robert. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. So, and just to kind of reiterate, a membership that is watching and observing, thank you so much for joining us. The questions, we've created avenues for you to express questions and concerns and raise up those questions. Now this is the board's turn. So that's what the framing is. We've had the town hall, we've had the multiple documents. So, but to answer your question, yeah, we decided that a part-time student could be eligible to be a candidate for the board, but doesn't mean they would be elected. The students would have to make that decision. And yeah, so, okay.
I have a question. This is Blanca. I think Macalo asked about, and the answer is no, but should the term actually really, I mean, wouldn't it be more beneficial for the term to mirror the board members' terms of 2 years?
We did not discuss that. That didn't come up as one of the things to discuss, so that's not on the proposals today.
Okay. And I mean, I understand, you know, there's the turnover rate and the graduation rate, so maybe
That would be my assumption too. Most student representation has full voting rights, a board membership at voting, at least O&A, and they serve, I believe, 1 year as well. So, all right. So from what I can tell, no other board members asking a question for this concept. So let's move to the next one, which is a student member is entitled to elect the board of directors. Do you want to talk about that? Already?
Talk about the composition of the board of directors?
Yes, oops, yeah. So that's concept one. Just we reaffirm that last blue sentence, the student member is entitled to be elected onto the board of directors only as a student representative. Just summarizing and condensing the previous language, right? Then we move on to the next section, student representative. We talked about the qualifications where we're removing full-time, we're removing broadcast or print or new media and just say in journalism. There was a question in the past in terms of, well, who proves that? Well, the election committee tries to do a background check, but we don't police whether you're still a student member, even though you graduated 13 months ago, right? So we don't really police that stuff. But this is for being put onto the board or putting on the ballot that then the members decide. We put in here exclusively that the students only the students can elect the student, a representative. We had discussed whether or not we should change the nomination process, but we decided to put that, you know, let's talk about that at another time. So it still requires 25 signatures. Student signatures of members of good standing to get nominated there. We added this section here to again reaffirm that the student representative is a member of the board of the directors and has a right to vote on all matters before the board of directors. So that's again the same concept that we're talking about. That is the core of what we're talking about here. I thought we had something in here and maybe I skipped it, in terms of student members' ability to vote for things outside of just the student representative. Did we put that in there or did we say we'll save that for another?
Tabled that, I think.
Did we? Okay. Is that okay? Cool. So what we had discussed was having student members have the ability. Currently, the student members only vote on their representative and their president. I believe those are the two things they get to vote on. We, as a committee, think that should be expanded more. I thought we put that in there, but I guess we moved that on to for the next cycle to consider, right? So students don't get to vote on the bylaw changes that apply to them right now. They don't have that ability to vote. Okay. So underneath here, this is a new section that we just added prior to the meeting where we're gonna just put in plain English what the concept is, yes or no, this is what it is. What is the spirit of the bylaw proposals going to be?
Robert, can I interrupt
yes.
for 1 second? I do think we do have 11. I counted again and we have 11. So we have.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Blanca.
Okay.
Okay. So I would ask the board to take a vote on this chunk to see if they agree to put this onto the ballot for the members to vote on, right? It doesn't mean this is being approved. This doesn't mean, and I'm gonna stop sharing screen here so we can see our hands going up and all that good stuff. So I don't know if we need to do a formal vote, if someone has to propose it and then someone second it.
Yes. So, and let me explain, I'll call for discussion after someone makes the motion. So if anyone else, like any members or any committee members want to make comments, we can still discuss this further. What were you,
Okay.
Holding, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Are we voting on all of them, or are we voting individually on each one of them?
Just one.
Right
So-
now, the student section.
So do we have a motion from the board to place?
I
this-
motion to vote on the proposal for the bylaw changes for the student representative.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. So let's have any more discussion is the question. Do any members have any comments, any committee members? If you do have a comment, put it in the chat and I'll call on you.
Looks like Christina.
All right, Christina, go ahead.
Thank you so much for calling on me. I just want to say very quickly that I strongly endorse this idea. NAHJ needs to continue to grow its membership, and cultivating members at the beginning of their career and ensuring their loyalty to our organization is the surest way to ensure our future and to make sure that we are continuing to bring in diverse voices into NAHJ. And so I really hope everyone supports the idea that students are journalists. We all know how hard people work on their high school and their college newspapers. They work many long hours and do it often for free. And we need to support them and show them that they are full members of NAHJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And yes, I agree. I mean, this one to me is one of the amendments that it absolutely makes sense to move forward on. Luis Joel, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, in this moment, I'm going to talk in Spanish. Sorry if I move from Spanish to English, but I'm going to talk in Spanish now. First of all, thank you for being all here. Para mí es muy importante que estén aquí porque lo importante de este cambio al reglamento o de esta modificación es que se le brinda a los estudiantes la oportunidad de tener una voz más fuerte en la mesa de directores. Que independientemente quizás seamos solamente un estudiante en la mesa, el estudiante pueda tener esa oportunidad de decir en qué cosas está a favor y en qué cosas está en contra. Y como siempre he enfatizado, esto no trata de restar derecho a la asociación o a los miembros actuales y tampoco trata de modificarle los derechos a los otros miembros, sino de añadirle derechos a personas que trabajamos en la asociación desde nuestro capítulo de estudiantes a favor de esta asociación, porque creemos en su magia, creemos en su propósito, y estamos agradecidos y queremos trabajar más. Y este voto sería, sin duda alguna, el resultado final de ese trabajo que hemos llevado a cabo durante muchísimo tiempo. Así que eso sería todo y muchísimas gracias por estar aquí.
Gracias, Luisol. Anyone else?
I think Johnny had a question
Go ahead, Johnny.
that I see that he put on the.
Yeah, I have a question. Does this include graduate students, or is this something that needs to be tabled?
And no, it does, because as long as you're a student in a journalism degree or a media, well, according to the current bylaws, as long as you're a student from either print, broadcast, or a media, degree, it doesn't matter whether it's undergraduate or graduate, it doesn't specify.
Does it need to be specified?
I don't think so. We didn't think we needed to. It's just higher education focusing on journalism.
Got it.
And your school may not have a major in journalism, and that's okay. If you are pursuing to do that and pursue a career in journalism, if you're passionate about that, we feel that you have the right to be on the ballot, but it's up to the student members to decide whether or not they want you to represent them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Diana has a question. Diana Fuentes has a question. If a part-time student can run, is it possible that someone whose primary source of income is something other than journalism could become a board member? She mentions that many part-time students have jobs in other fields.
That is what it would fall under that umbrella that yes, they are pursuing an education in journalism. They want a career in journalism, but I'm sure many of you had jobs, 2 jobs. I had 3 jobs at one point. But my passion for journalism didn't change. So yes, we're saying that now again, we're saying that they're put on the ballot. The students then vote and decide whether they want, and I'll be frank, maybe if I were a student, I don't want someone who is part-time because they're stretched thin, maybe, I don't know, not to represent me. But we're not saying that that person is automatically on the board. We're saying that they're on the ballot for the student reps
Robert, just a
student
question,
members.
clarification. Students will vote for this amendment, or it's open to all the professional members?
These, as it stands now, all bylaw changes are voted by the main members, lifetime members, academic members. Does not include student members, does not include associate members.
That's not, I don't know, we are trying to give students the right to vote, but we're not going to give them the right to vote for their bylaws. I don't think that's.
Yeah, so that we have to follow the current bylaws. I totally understand that sentiment. We discussed, like I mentioned, we discussed about putting those among the changes this year, but we've opted to wait till next time. But that is one of the things that we want to take on, giving student membership the ability to vote on everything, treating them as full members. But for right now, for this compressed timeline, at least reaffirm that the student representative on the board has full voting power. But we as a committee echo your thoughts. But we have to work with the bylaws that we have now.
Okay, so Hugo has joined the meeting. I'm going to give him a second to catch up. But in the meantime, any more discussion on this student amendment?
I saw Will ask to give a comment.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for coming out on the Saturday. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. I'll make this quick. I want to follow up on Christina's point, just investing in our young journalists, and also just to, I think we've got an embodiment of that in Luis Huet, who just like took a major leadership role in our committee. And, if that's representative of what student journalists can bring to the organization, we should invest in that and, tap into it more even, so.
Thank you, Will. All right. So I think that's it for the discussion. So I'm going to have Blanca do a roll call on the vote, and then we can move on to the other amendments. Go ahead, Blanca.
Okay. First of all, you can hear me, correct? All right. So this is to allow students to give students voting rights, correct? So Hugo Balta.
Yeah, to place the student amendment on the elections.
The ballot.
Yes, on the ballot.
Hugo Balta.
Yay.
Yvette Cabrera.
Yes.
And I just skip over the ones who are not here, correct? Or maybe should I still say their names?
Say their names.
Okay, so Nick Valencia, who is not present. Yvette Cabrera was you said yes.
Yes.
Nancy San Martin.
Yes, yes.
Geraldine Cole Socar.
Yay.
Finn Gomez.
Aye. Yay.
Rafael Mejia.
Yes.
Robert Hernandez.
Yes.
Steve Solis.
Yes.
Monica Castillo. Don't believe she was present. Melissa Macaya.
Yes.
Alwin Lopez, who also is not present. Nanette Sosa, not present. Blanca Rios, that's me, yes. Johnny Cordova.
Yes.
Christy Fajardo.
Yes.
Angelica Serrano. Well, hopefully next time we can have you both. Thanks.
No, let me clarify something. We were under the misimpression that Angelica could not vote on voting matters. The lawyer said she can vote, and the bylaws allude to that, but that's why we want to reaffirm. So I would propose to the board that she is allowed to vote now, because she should have been allowed to vote the entire time of her career.
Thank you.
Second that.
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
So Angelica?
Presente.
Presente. So that's an overwhelming yes.
Is that a yes? Okay.
Yes. Presente? No, sí o no?
Angelica, you need to say if you approve.
Oh, I thought it was, okay. Yeah, I approve.
So that's a yes for all voting members.
Okay, so the motion passes to place this on the ballot. Hugo, just to recap, Robert brought everyone attending up to speed on and gave an update on the bylaws committee work, and we've addressed the student amendment, but we still need to address the other amendments. Do you want to take it from here, or do you want me to continue running the meeting?
No, if you can, and again, my apologies for being late. My gratitude to Robert and the committee looking at the bylaws. I'm sorry for being disruptive, but if you don't mind, I'd love for you to continue.
All right, let's go on to the next amendment then, Robert.
Great. So the next chapter, or the next section that we're focusing on, is the elections. The subcommittee members were Dino, Keldy, and Christina. Dino was the subcommittee chair. Dino, why don't you break it down per section, the concepts?
Sure. Give me a second to refresh my memory. It's been a little while since we last worked on this. Okay, this addresses if the annual convention is ever delayed again. What the committee came up with was language that says that voting must begin prior to the start of the convention, which has been the practice, and that in the event that the convention is delayed, the membership, I'm sorry, forgive me a second, that in the event that the convention is delayed, the vote must still take place, but no later than the second Friday of October of that year. We chose that date specifically because there are times that we meet with SPJ or maybe other organizations that meet a little later than we traditionally meet when we're meeting by ourselves. We also want to put language into this, is that the board must not cancel the election. In other words, the election always takes place whether there is a delay in the convention date or not. That's basically it.
And let me chime in to give some context from the lawyer's perspective and some of the things that we discussed. So in incorporating in DC, there is a standard protocol that an election can be postponed or canceled by an organization, but the election must take place within 15 months. We as a committee felt that we wanted to have a more tighter deadline, and for us as members of this organization, we wanted to not allow the cancellation of the election. We also understand that there are things that happen that need to give the board wiggle room, and that's why we put in the ability to postpone the election, but we believe firmly that the election needs to happen no later than the second Friday of October. So that's that concept. Also, just to kind of be transparent as well, from the lawyer's perspective, and apparently the majority of nonprofits incorporated in DC, they have the annual membership meeting, and at their annual membership meeting is when the election takes place. For us at NAHJ, we have an annual conference, and we have an annual membership meeting at the conference. The election typically begins before the conference and ends at the Noche de Gran Baile, the gala where we announce the election results. So there was confusion with the lawyer not understanding our concept and how we frame it. But he said, as long as you guys spell it out on the bylaws, it makes total sense, go for it. So that's how we are, those are the two things that we put together to have this segment in there. We have some other changes that we'll talk about, but this is the concept about the election timeline, postponement, and cancellation. So I think this is one that we should open it up for a motion, discussion, and vote.
Okay, thank you both. I did have a question that I sent that Robert, you forwarded to the committee members. Yeah. And I'll ask it again here, and I wondered if you guys might address it, but one of my concerns, or what my main concern is whether this addition is in the right section. In the bylaws under subsection C of that section 5.12, it says, 1, approval of an action by ballot comma, other than the election of directors and officers requires that, and then it lists the subsections. And so the committee's proposing to add this to this section, and I'm concerned that because it says other than the election of directors and officers, that it might not apply. So I don't know if the committee can respond to that, whether it's in the right section.
What is the subsection you were looking at again? I'm in the current bylaws. I put that in the chat before. We can put it in again. So 5.12.
So yes, 5.12, where it says action by ballot, and then it has the subsections A, B, C, and then C, the voting requirements. And then beneath that, there are the other subsections. And it looks like, based on the wording of the amendment, that it would go under A and B. So this would be C, right? So if you put it there, my question is it the right section? Because right above it, it says—
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it says approval of an action by ballot other than the election of directors and officers.
Okay.
So the very thing that the committee's trying to address, I think would be voided. I'm not sure, but I'm asking.
No, that's a very good note in terms of putting it in the right section. So what I would propose, let's talk about the concept, and 100% we'll move it to the right section. Unless, Dino, do you have a response to that?
No, I don't. When I was reviewing placement for the bylaws, I did think that that was the best place for it. I'm not locked into that position whatsoever, Yvette. It wouldn't bother me at all if you think it might fit better elsewhere. But I did review the bylaws, I thought, very thoroughly, and I thought that was the right place for it based on what was above it and what was below it.
Wait,
But I would
can we recap? Because I'm confused now. Where is Yvette proposing it should go?
Okay, so there isn't, I'm going to put in the chat a link to the current bylaws. The issue is not the concept. The question Yvette is raising is the placement of where to put it in there. So I would say that, why don't we propose in terms of motion, seconding the concept, and then let's debate the concept and then take a vote on the concept. 100% noted of where we place it makes all the difference. So we'll definitely do that and clear that up. But the concept is what I think we need to discuss and debate. But thank you for that, Yvette. I think that's, I agree with you on that.
Okay.
Does that seem to work for everyone in terms of opening it up so we can have those discussions? Because I think what you're bringing up as well makes sense to put it under the discussion after it's been motioned, seconded, and open up for discussion.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to place this amendment on the ballot?
I motion to place the.
Can I ask a question before we do that?
Yes.
Yes, you may.
I was just curious about the October date, only because it does lock you into a particular month. I understand, the reasoning behind it, but thinking about if there's a disaster or something like that, that could be a problem. I'm just curious to hear about the October, like, God forbid we had another 9/11 or something like that. I mean, knock on wood. Locking us into October.
Sure. We took a page out of the Constitution that laid out when the election is, or that framework, and we thought that no matter what, let's put a marker in there. We picked October because if we partnered up with SPJ, they often have late conferences in September. So we thought October would give us enough buffer. Most of our conferences happen over the summer. So that still gives us a long timeline to get there. Dino, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, that's a good point, Robert. Typically, our conferences do happen over the summer. I'm not sure exactly what month. My memory is fuzzy on that. But typically, this would give us a 4-month window, with the window ending in October to accommodate SPJ. So we got 4 months to conduct the elections. But I do think we need to have an end date so that we are locked in and that there's plenty of wiggle room with an end date. I think that is the approach that we should take. I don't think the end date should be so fuzzy that we can extend it beyond that. I think October 15th is a reasonable date, since our conferences are held typically in the summer. So when you consider that our conventions are typically held in the summer, more or less June, that's a 4-month window.
Yeah,
We should be able to conduct our elections in plenty of time.
We had talked about putting a specific date, but again, inspired by, you know, the second Tuesday of November, or first Tuesday of November, we put in the second Friday of October.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll have more discussion about this after the motion. All right, do we have a motion?
I motion.
Yeah, there was a motion,
Oh, that's, was it Geraldine?
but there wasn't a second.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so Blanca seconds. All right, so let's discuss this further. First of all, are there any other concerns or any other questions from either the board, the committee?
Yeah, I'm still not clear where the placement would be. Can we repeat that part? I'm sorry, I didn't have the current bylaws open, so I just want to be able to follow.
So let me reflect that back, and Yvette, correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at section 5.12 in the bylaws, we had put it under, we were proposing putting it in section C, but above at the start of section, I keep losing myself, above in section C, there is a subsection I that says approval of action by ballot other than the election of directors and officers requires that. And so the other than election of directors and officers would undermine what we are proposing. So that placement under that subsection I as a new subsection C, there's a conflict there. So I think that's a reasonable, thank you for catching that. I agree with you. So we'll figure out where to place it in the bylaw. So
There is, and the committee would have to explore this further, but one section that I thought it might fit is section 7.4, election and term. And under subsection A, it discusses election of members, and specifically the election of officers shall be held every 2 years in connection with the annual meeting of members in even numbered years. It could fit in there. Possibly.
which subsection A? And then I missed it.
Yeah,
I mean,
so 7.4,
7.4.
election and term, and subsection A.
You better
Perfect.
like that.
Okay.
I was just looking at it. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So would it be C? Would it be B and then nominations become C?
We
In
can
that
either
section?
we can either incorporate it into that subsection A, or you can add a C to that. So right now there's only subsection A and B. You can add it as C, or you can just add it to that first subsection A.
I would argue this is important enough and needs to stand by itself.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, so maybe we create subsection C, but we will let's focus on the concept on there. But thank you, that is a big catch. Thank you for that. More questions from the board and as well from the members as well, and the board can ask questions on behalf of the membership. Then I believe we must now take a roll vote.
Hold on one second. McCullough is asking, will these be separate questions on the ballot or all the same question? I think you said, Robert, separate, right?
Yeah, so right now we're talking about the concepts, and these concepts are what are going to be presented on the ballot, because we think it's unfair, like all or nothing type of approach about these things. So we want to break those out. Yeah.
And we're going to use criteria.
Yeah, and we want to use clear language on the concepts, because, you know, there's bylaw language, and I don't want to get the bylaw language be what holds us up. Let's talk about the concepts as mandates of what is expected to be reflected in the bylaws.
All right. Any other concerns, questions?
I mean, I think one clarification I want to make to Robert's point is, you know, all of this has been looked at by the lawyers, everything that
yes,
us, the election committee is presenting. So the language itself has been looked by a lawyer already.
Yeah, twice. But we still want to, you know, make it as simple as possible. And yeah.
All right, so if there's no further discussion or questions, we can do the roll call for the vote. Blanca, go ahead.
Muting, give me 1 second. Okay, Hugo Balta,
Yes.
Nick Valencia, who was not present. Eva Cabrera,
Yes.
Nancy San Martin,
Yes.
Geraldine Coles, Azocar.
Yes.
You and your name. Fen Gomez,
Yes. Aye.
Rafael Mejia,
Yes.
Robert Hernandez,
Yes.
Steve Solis,
Yes.
Monica Castillo, I believe is still not present, Melissa Macaya,
Yes.
Alwyn Lopez.
Yes.
Oh, you're here, Alwyn. Okay. Nanette Sosa. Blanca Rios, that's me, yes. Johnny Cordova.
Yes.
Christy Fajardo.
Yes.
Angelica Serrano Roman.
Yes.
Great. So it's unanimous.
All right, so the motion passes. So this is to place it on the ballot.
On the
All right.
ballot.
Let's go on to the next one, Robert.
Let's make sure I got my right tab open. Hold on. Hold on.
I think that's the
That
wrong
bar.
concept.
No, yeah, the bar on whatchamacallit blocked the ability to click on the tab. So here you go.
While you do that, Frances has a question. She says, when you say these measures were reviewed by a lawyer, is it the same lawyer who advised that it was okay to postpone the elections?
You know, I wasn't involved with which lawyer it was about postponing the election, so I can't say that, but it was Chris, and his last name, I forget, who we've been consistently working with. So I can't say whether it was the same one or not.
Google, can you do that?
I believe the answer, Alberto, go ahead.
It is. It's the same attorney from Covington. And as Robert pointed out, the election just needed to happen within 15 months of the last annual meeting. So it still allowed the board to make that decision.
Hi, sorry, this is actually Chris Yen from Covington.
Hey,
hi,
thank you.
Just listening in. So yeah, if you have any questions, direct it to me. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Chris.
Everyone, that was Chris who reviewed it twice. He's been fantastic. Thank you, Chris, for joining us on this Saturday. We're moving on to the next concept in terms of annual meetings and such. Some of these are small, but do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we wanted to give the board a little bit of flexibility under item 8.1. And we added a little bit of language and deleted a little bit more. And basically what we're doing here is that the newly elected board of directors shall meet following the election of the directors. We're taking out the language about an annual meeting immediately so that there is some flexibility within the board. Sometimes the board meets on Saturday night. Sometimes they meet on Sunday morning. This will allow the president a little bit of flexibility if necessary in determining when it is that the newly elected board would meet. Again, traditionally they met within 24 hours. If the president needs a bit more time to convene everybody, there's a little bit more time in order to do that. That was the purpose of making this change.
This is a quote unquote a small one, but I don't want to be dismissive of it. We kind of cleaned up some language along the way. Should we take a vote on this one as well, or it does overlap a little bit with the next one? What do you guys, bylaw committee, should we, well, let's go through it in concepts. Should we vote on this one, or should we merge it with the next one?
No, I think we should merge both.
Okay. So Dino stepped away from the screen, but to fill in, the next one was in connection in terms of, there was a lot of discussion before in terms of currently when a board is elected, the outgoing members are out. And looking at different organizations, there are different approaches to that. One organization that we were looking at was ONA, which members continue and complete the calendar year, and the new board members start in January. Again, similar to our current government, right? There's a lame duck session, if you will. But we decided and debated different times and lengths of should we wait till the calendar year, and we settled on that the outgoing board members will immediately become non-voting ex officios and remain on the board for 30 days. We really wanted to find a way to do a transition period to kind of transfer over knowledge. And then after that, they're not going to be on the board. They're not going to be getting the board emails and such. So that's the thinking behind that.
Additionally, what we wanted to do was kind of formalize the notion of a transition period. It probably takes place informally already, but we just thought it'd be a very good idea not to lose that institutional knowledge and formalize it within that 30-day period. Hey, we expect you to hang out a bit and for you guys to chat despite the fact that you lost the election.
Exactly. So let's open that up for thoughts, conversations, discussion. Then we'll make a motion, seconding that motion, then roll call vote.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Why is it 30 days and not longer?
That's traditional. 30 days is a pretty common period. And surely people can pass enough knowledge on in 30 days and don't need 3 months in which to do that.
And did you say, and I'm sorry if I missed it, I know it's in the writing, did the ex officios still have voting rights, you said?
No, ma'am.
They do not.
Non-voting ex officio members, which some would argue is even redundant. But yes, we wanted to make it clear that they remain not only ex officio, but to clarify in case there was an ambiguity that they will be non-voting. The vote count will never change with respect to this amendment. It will remain static.
I have a question as it pertains to the president currently being ex officio once the new board comes in. And just for clarification, the ex officio currently, ex-president does not have voting rights.
Correct. That's correct. At least that was the case during my time on the board. The ex-president served as an advisory. And that typically is what an ex officio is there for, to serve an advisory board position to help out with advice, give counsel, etc.
And that was the practice that I had after my first term, but I do know that at least in one administration, there was some ambiguity in regards to the role of the ex officio, including voting rights, but that clarification, thank you.
Now, this doesn't address that, but from my experience, which was lengthy, that was the case, non-voting ex-president.
Yeah, actually it does just seal it. Any doubt whatsoever, you're no longer, you were not elected on the board, you do not have voting rights for board matters.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with these amendments. I think they're very helpful, especially for positions like the financial officer, which is a lot of responsibility and helps ensure a transition that's smooth. So yeah.
Yeah, we just wanted to formalize it a bit. It probably takes place informally nonetheless, but that basically tells people, despite the fact that you might have lost an election to a competitor, we still need you to chat and communicate and pass information back and forth.
Right. Any other questions, concerns? Let me just check the chat box.
I do. I have a question.
Go ahead, Johnny.
So is this a voluntary meeting between the outgoing and the newly elected?
They would schedule their own time whenever they want.
Should it be made clear that it's mandatory, obligatory for them to meet?
We talked about that, and we opted to have strong, encouraging language. But how do you? What are the consequences if you don't? That was the reason why we.
I do think that the consequences are important, because if you are completely new, and I'm speaking about my case, I never had that chance to meet with the outgoing person. I think you lose a lot of the background of what's happening in your region. So that's why I'm saying, should it be mandatory? Should it be implemented? Or maybe the language could be tweaked and changed so it's not obligatory.
May I address that, Robert?
Please.
It's in the bylaws. That makes it obligatory. It's in the bylaws.
We're not going to punish people if they just are so upset or for whatever reason unavailable for 30 days and they ghost and they disappear. I think we're in agreement, Jenny, that it is an important thing, so much so that we're putting it in the bylaws. But how do we police it, or what are the consequences?
Where is it? Where is the language in the bylaws?
No, well, if we vote on it and it's approved, it'll be in the bylaws.
Okay,
And
so
not to mention, we have a transition period.
Currently, it's not there, but that's why we want to put it.
Correct.
But it will not be mandatory.
No, but I think to Dino's point is because we're putting it in the bylaws, it's sort of a rule. And so everybody who joins the board knows that we need to leave the board.
Okay, so I would go back to maybe extending that period instead of 30 days, 45. That way there is like no excuse.
I mean, the rest of the board, when we do have a newly elected board, we meet initially, we have the retreats. I think that's enough acquaintance and getting to know everybody. I don't think,
Yeah, but that's not with the that's not with the outgoing board members, Blanca. That's only with the new formed board. This is to allow both the old board and the new board to all be in one big meeting.
Actually, we also talked about whether we should require that type of meeting, and we said it should be up for the president. The spirit of the concept is the transition. Hand knowledge over is the right thing to do, so much so that we're putting it in the bylaws. Now, let's say that person does want to meet with you. They're outgoing, you're incoming, right? So let's say Johnny is replacing me on the board, but my father has passed away. I cannot meet with you in 30 days, but I can meet you in day 31. There's no policing in terms of, getting in trouble or anything like that. We just want to encourage the spirit of transition because it benefits the staff, it benefits the members, it benefits the board, it benefits the organization. The date is, we can debate it back and forth. We've done straw polls at the town hall, and 30 days is what came on top multiple times. If in the future we decide, my gosh, we need much longer, or if we come around that we want to have this officially kick off in January, that could be a future proposal. But I think this is a very solid and framed appropriate addition to the bylaws, right? Because there's nothing there stating how important this is.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
All right. Any other questions? Concerns? All right. So Blanca, do you want to take the roll call?
Wait, we got to make a motion in a second.
Sorry. All right. Do we have a motion to place this amendment on the ballot?
I'll motion. It's Finn. I'll
Thanks,
motion
Finn.
to place it on the ballot.
We have a
And
second?
Solis seconds. Solis seconds.
All right. Go ahead, Blanca.
Okay, Hugo Balta,
Yes.
Nick Valencia, who's not present, Yvette Cabrera,
Yes.
Nancy San Martin,
Yes.
Geraldine,
Yes, aye.
Finn Gomez,
Sí. Aye.
Rafael Mejia,
Yes.
Robert Hernandez,
Yes.
Steve Solis,
Yes.
Monica Castillo is still not here, Melissa Macaya,
Yes.
Alwin Lopez,
Yes.
Ninette Sosa, not present, Blanca Rios, yes, Johnny Cordova,
Yes.
Christy Fajardo,
Yes.
Angelica Serrano Roman.
Yes.
Unanimous again.
Thank you, folks.
The motion
And
passes.
I feel like I want to say that after every time we take these board votes, this is not making the bylaws pass. This is just putting it onto the ballot. So let's move on to the next section. Still connected. So this one is in between board stuff and transparency. Transparency is the next section, but the election subcommittee took this on. So Dino, why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, first of all, I want to recognize that the subcommittee thinks it's very important that the tool of executive session be available at all times. It is an important tool available to us and as organization, and we need to exercise it whenever we think it's necessary to do so. What we wanted to do very simply was clarify a few points as to when it is that executive session is available to the board and how it is that we should use that as a tool, especially with respect to the fact that there was a groundswell of concern about executive session matters. And so that's what this is meant to address. And basically what what the bylaws proposal states, if I can read it out loud, a motion must be made in open session with the stated purpose and a recorded vote as to why you want to go into executive session. We want to discuss personnel matters. Okay. Vote on executive session for personnel matters. Boom. All right. So executive session takes place. It must meet certain qualifications: personnel matters, land acquisition, and legal matters. These are very standard when it comes to governmental agencies, city councils, etc. This, of course, is not uniform throughout America because local communities do it the way they want. But I researched several places, and these are the common reasons as to why organizations, school boards are going to executive session. And I thought that they were applicable toward us. So any motion that is needed to be made must be made in open session. And the vote must be made in open session with the recording by the secretary. You want to give our illustrious executive director a raise, have all the discussion about personnel in executive session, but then the vote about his raise takes place in open session. That is standard operating procedure, at least in some of the meetings that I've covered when I was a reporter. This does not take away at all the tool of executive session. In fact, I would argue it even strengthens it. All that we're asking is that the vote be made in public and record who voted how. That's effectively the purpose behind this.
I had a question or a concern. I am concerned that there may be a situation, like a sensitive matter, that is not covered by these three points here. And I'm concerned that you may be hamstringing future boards by not having a more general reason in there. Like I would say, I would say like something like sensitive matters that maybe, like, for instance, let's just say someone is attacking a board member online and there are legal reasons why you don't want to have those discussions, or liability reasons that you don't want to have those discussions in a public board meeting. And so, but it may not be technically a legal matter. So I'm just wondering if there is a catch-all phrase that can be added for a sensitive issue that maybe doesn't fall under a legal matter, a land acquisition, or a personnel matter.
And I would add, sorry to interrupt, and Robert, you were a member of the committee during our tenure that looked into the alleged misconduct of members of NAHJ. I would chime into what Yvette's saying. That falls in a different subcategory, as she put it. So you, having been a member of that committee, and the discussions that were had by the committee, and then also the discussions that were had with the executive board and board members, which were all in executive session. What's your thinking? What are your thoughts in regards to Yvette's question within that frame?
I actually think it is covered in that. And we actually brought that up as an example. It falls into legal matters and personnel matters to a certain extent. But to me, we didn't want to defame or libel anyone as we were doing these things. It was such a sensitive matter that makes sense. It is a tricky thing in terms of how do you, sensitive, if we put sensitive, it just is up for debate. What do you mean by sensitive? So that example was a fantastic one that we talked about, and it's under legal matters.
If you're talking about a sexual harassment issue, I would argue that falls under personnel matters.
And
You
legal
to move into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
But it's also legal. It's also
It's
legal.
also legal.
I think you're good.
Yeah.
And I had a question. So if it involves a board member, would it then also fall under personnel, even though we're not paid?
I would argue yes. We have the attorney on
too.
the line. I'd like to hear what his thoughts are, but I think it'd be fine.
You're a volunteer. You're a board member. You volunteer. So still, I mean, you're not paid, but you.
But you're part of the personnel.
The attorney can address that. So what, I'm just.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think it would be covered. I mean, I guess I would just sort of emphasize that, when we're saying personnel and legal, we're trying to be broad and, I mean, obviously don't want to abuse it, but, if the board, in good faith thinks that this, this should be within a category, I think they should have the authority to go to executive.
These are very broad umbrellas. I think
Yeah.
you're okay. I'm not trying to hamstring you, not by any means. Executive session is an essential tool to your day-to-day operation. Having said that, whatever action is taking place because of executive session should be an open session. Just the action, not the discussion, just the action.
And I just want to be sure of that, though, because once we put this into the bylaws, then it has to fall under those umbrellas. And that's why I'm asking, like, and maybe Chris, you can clarify this. Is there, like, what would fall under legal? Like, is it like a lawsuit against us? Is it, liability issues? Someone, claiming that something that the board is discussing in a public meeting is going to defame them in some way. I just want to make sure that that umbrella term covers all sensitive issues and not just legal issues.
Yeah, I guess I would argue that all those are potentially legal issues. I mean, if you are opening the company up to liability or if there's any potential of a lawsuit, I think all that would fall under the umbrella of a legal issue.
And Chris, just to clarify, also to piggyback on Yvette's point, I mean, this would also extend to sensitive issues involving members, of the organization, which could be a sensitive issue that could open us to, legal action if we discuss openly. So it would also extend to members as well, correct?
I would agree. I think Chris would agree as well.
Well, Chris, personnel matters. Does it apply to members?
I'm not, I guess, I mean, you could sort of almost in parentheses put in, including members and board members if you want to, eliminate any ambiguity in there. Yeah, I guess a member may not, you wouldn't necessarily think of them as a personnel, but but it could fall into a legal matter. But you could certainly put it in parentheticals to just confirm that it applies to them as well.
Two points that I would add. One, the ambiguity in there allows the board in good faith to make those decisions. The more specifics and you slice it, the more constrained the board will be. We're assuming good faith, right? So that's one. Two, the thing that I want to make sure is that if official board action is taken as a result of the conversation, that vote has to be done in public. So if you do a straw poll just to kind of get a temperature of the room, which the president should do, and maybe doesn't want to commit to an official action, that does not have to be done in open session. It's the president trying to foster a debate on possibly an extremely sensitive topic, that we need to do it in a closed door session. Those are the things that I would add.
Folks, I think you've got enough flexibility here under the 3 categories you've been given that you can still conduct all the business and discussions, all you need to discuss. All that we're asking is that the vote be taken in public. Not to mention, these 3 categories are standard for most governmental agencies. If it's good enough for El Paso City Council, Isleta School District, it's probably good enough for us.
Now,
I think these are, sorry. Robert, I just wanted to say, I think this is a good step in the right direction. And serving on a different board, we have similar sort of statutes in our bylaws. And I think that worked out well for us, and especially within those 3 areas that you've laid out. And I think it's a good call, and should be opened up to should be placed on the ballot.
Thank you.
Perhaps we do 2 votes for this concept, and maybe we separate it. One, the call for when to make it an executive session, and the other one for the vote, or do we put them together?
Together, sir.
Agreed.
That's just me, though. I'm not on the board.
Okay.
I'm fine with something together. That's fine. I mean, because I don't have a problem voting for something in public. I think that's correct. I just want to make sure, because as board members, we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the organization does not get sued, and that when we have these discussions, they are done in an executive session so that we don't open ourselves up to that liability. And so, you know, given Dino the explanation and you know, that umbrella term legal can include sensitive issues, I'm okay with that. That was a concern that I just wanted to talk through to make sure that we're not hamstringing, you know, future boards so that they are unable to have those discussions in executive session to protect the organization, which is the membership. So, so yeah.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
And we can always check with the lawyer also. I mean, if there's any, like I think that's been mentioned, that if there's a sensitive issue that arises that needs like further evaluation, if it fits underneath those 3 umbrellas, we can always check with the attorney. I mean, if we have that much concern about the topic, but you know, this is a good measure. I think it should be considered by our membership.
Robert, I had a quick question. Melissa here. I also agree that it's great to, you know, set up these guidelines and these guidelines for transparency as well. My question is, once we vote publicly and we want to be transparent with our membership on how we voted, given that these are, whether it's legally sensitive issues or whichever issue it is that falls under these 3 categories, you know, we have to then be careful on how we present, what context or information do we then share with our membership that is tied to the action that was taken. Are we just going to say, members, there was a sensitive or legal issue that was voted on and these were the results? I just could see a situation where our members are asking, well, what was voted on? So I just pose that to our board and to the committee on, I am totally for transparency and making that for our members, but we also probably need to be ready for what context or information do we tie to those results?
Yeah, so there's action. If you think about it, if it's sensitive and held in executive session, but the organization, the board has decided to make official action, then that vote needs to be public. And if it's drastic enough that you're taking official action as an entity, you do need to communicate whatever is appropriate on that. We're not touching that in terms of how you should communicate that, but it's clear if the board, the organization is taking an official action, then that needs to be, you know, on the record. And how you present the context, that's definitely up.
Can I say something about that, Robert? That is also how you frame it when you come out of executive session. And sometimes, you know, you can also decide how to frame it when you are in executive session. Then you come out and then you make that language that is not, you know, that is not gonna get you in trouble, you know, and then you vote for it. So yeah. I don't think that's an issue because I done it.
But you need to be thoughtful of it for
Yes,
sure.
definitely.
The board needs to be thoughtful about it. And that's actually the spirit of this proposal, is making sure in good faith that the board is making these decisions and not taking them lightly, and being able to be held accountable for their actions to the members that elected them to represent them. That's the spirit.
Robert, quick question. This is Elwyn. Do you think it would be difficult to, because, you know, I keep on thinking about that as well. Would it be difficult to frame those sensitive conversations when it comes to a vote? Because how are members going to be allowed to vote on things that we've discussed in executive session when they're sensitive and they don't know exactly what we're talking about?
So the membership, general membership, is not voting. This is about the board, and the board matters.
Okay, got it.
And to answer that, you know, we represent the members. The members elected us to be here for us to have this discussion and do these votes and steer the association.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. So the executive session would have those sensitive discussions and then the board would vote.
Correct.
Okay.
In public.
Thank you.
Yes, the vote would take place in open session. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And that means as well is that the record of the vote will be included in the minutes, which will be shared with the membership, so you can see who voted which way.
Suzanne Gamboa has a question, and Robert, I believe this came up in the bylaws committee meeting about whether the rules on executive session need to be in compliance with open meetings laws of the state or city where it's chartered, or is it exempt as a nonprofit?
Chris can probably answer that, but before Chris does, I would say that most nonprofits, we are adding additional transparency and requirements. We as a committee, and hearing the message from the membership, we are adding on top of these things that other nonprofits and other organizations incorporated in DC do not do. So Chris can please, if you want to add that, but we are adding more transparency and more of these requirements compared to other nonprofits. Chris, do you want to weigh in? I don't know.
Yeah, so I was thinking, okay. Yeah, I think that the rules for this, you know, in the DC code are pretty broad and sort of allow the bylaws to do sort of step in that as they will. So I don't think this, you know, violates any provision there.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions or discussion?
Yes, I think this was missed. I wrote this up here. Now I can't find it. Here. Robert was talking about in good faith. So I wrote, we should include the in good faith language to this proposal. Nothing should be assumed. It should be included because everyone on the board acts in good faith and without any ulterior motives. I know that that has been an issue from what I've seen after the election vote. I think that we as board members, we vote with the information that we have at that point in time and in good faith. I don't think, so I think that that should be included. Just to make the point that we all have the best interest of NHJ. So that should be part of that language.
Where is it, John?
He put in a comment there proposing whether we add the phrase in good faith.
Back to the document.
But before we do that, I would assume that in good faith applies to the entire bylaws, right? It applies to your approach to serving on the board. I don't think we need to put that in the bylaws, or okay, because it would be all over the place.
That's the thing. I mean, if it's implied and it's assumed, that's when we get into a conflict, maybe in a legal setting, because it's just implied, but it's not written clearly in the document. So I think, let me go back to the document. It could be, I'm not saying this is where it should go, but let's say you're reading it and it would say the reasons for moving into executive session must be one of the following. Let's say it would go in here, in good faith, legal matters, land acquisition. I'm not saying that that's where it should go, but that maybe we need to look into having this as part of the language of this amendment.
Chris, would you mind chiming in here? To me, it would be binary. The assumption is that in bad faith is accepted in the framing, but I don't think that is how it works. But Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, I mean, just as a note, I mean, every action that the board takes, you know, you guys have a fiduciary duty to do it in good faith, you know, as well as, I mean, there are certain board duties, loyalty to the association, duty of care, to be careful, duty of good faith, to, you know, to do your actions in good faith. So I don't think it's 100% necessary. I mean, I don't know that you lose anything by putting, you know, saying, you know, it's one of these three matters, you know, in the good faith determination of the board. I don't think it's wrong to put it in, but I don't necessarily think it's necessary either.
I think I've read several manuals and where I think that the law needs to be redundant just to make it clear. And that would be my suggestion, my opinion. Of course, we can vote on it, and this is this something that could be modified in the future. Like you say, you could table a couple of items, but I do think that that is important, because I think that from experience, the last time there was a lot of backlash, and I don't think that anybody on the board had any ulterior motives or anything. And I think that if we're coming into this conversation, we need to come in with that already established. You know, nobody here is going to do anything in detriment of NHJ. So it would be best if it's completely 100% clear.
So what I would propose is, let's again focus on the concept, right? The concept is, you know, when to go to executive session, and if official action is taken, those votes are done in open session. We can go back and discuss the language for the subcommittee, and we can also hear back from the board. But I would propose that we then let's take a motion and a second on the concept, on the spirit of what is there.
All right. Well, the question is, do you want to add that language now or save it for later, Robert? Because that will determine the motion. Because
I would save it for later, because in my interpretation, as chair of the bylaws committee, not talking to the rest of my committee, good faith is implied in why do you run? It's good faith. Why do you serve? In good faith of the organization. So that's implied. If other people don't believe you, there's nothing that could be done, and putting that phrase in the bylaws, I don't think is going to change. So for now, I would say not to put that for this motion at the moment.
Actually, this conversation that's being recorded right now serves to that purpose too, because it makes it clear that you and everybody else, we all agree this is in good faith. So So yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all right. So do we have a motion to place the 8.5 executive sessions on the ballot?
Motion.
Who was
I
that?
second
motion,
that. This is
Lisa.
Christy.
All right, so that was Finn who motioned,
Yes.
Yeah.
and who seconded? Christy?
Christy.
Yeah.
All right. All right, any more discussion? All right, Blanca, can you go ahead and take the vote?
Sure. Hugo Balta,
Yes.
Nick Valencia, Yvette Cabrera,
Yes.
Nancy San Martin,
Yeah.
Geraldine Coles Azocar,
Aye.
Finn Gomez,
Aye.
Rafael Mejia,
Yes.
Robert Hernandez,
Yes.
Steve Solis,
Yes.
Monica Castillo, Melissa Macaya,
Yeah.
Alwin Lopez,
Yes.
Nanette Sosa, Blanca Rios, yes. Johnny Cordova,
Yes.
Christy Fajardo,
Yes.
Angelica Serrano Roman.
Yes.
Unanimous.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. So now we're going to move, this was a transitionary one to transparency. Now we're going to go into that section. The subcommittee there was chaired by McNally Torres, alongside Barbara Rodriguez, Keldy, and Christina as well. And so let's start with section 5.7. McNally, do you want to talk about this one? Subsection C. It's a proposal of a new section.
Well, I mean, that's very black and white. I mean, and I want to say that when we sent a survey to the membership, they made it clear that they want transparency. So this was on the top of the survey, and it was overwhelmingly responded by them. So we took that into account too, and we gave some examples. So I don't know if you want to take this. I mean, it's just like very clear that if you are meeting, and the example that we use is like, you know, it's Taco Tuesday and everybody's gathering, or Robert's quinceañera, and you know, if you discuss any matters or, you know, takes any action, you know, minutes must be taken and published of that. So that's
Yes.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, just to read it for the benefit. At every gathering where there is a quorum of the board of directors and action taken, minutes must be taken and published. So retreats, Taco Tuesdays, impromptu meeting in the hallway, where there is a quorum of the board of directors and action taken, we expect minutes and those minutes to be published.
Do we have a time frame for that yet, though?
In terms of publishing the minutes?
Well, in approving the minutes, I guess, and then publishing them?
Yeah, so everyone wants minutes sooner, but the way the vast majority of boards work is that the board, when the next meeting happens, the board approves the minutes from, at the very least, approve the minutes from the previous thing. It could be done through, you know, email vote or what have you. We discussed, should we put a timeline in there, but we didn't want to hamstring the board. As soon as ready is kind of like the intent in good faith.
Months later, you know, not until the very next quarterly or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Meeting.
Yeah, we discussed it, and really it's up for the president because the president determines how frequently they meet. The board meets, right? Some might meet. I've been on boards where we met every month. Other boards quarterly, other boards twice a year. So it just depends really on the president. And we debated what we want, but we're not president. So that was kind of like the framing. I don't know if the other committee members want to chime in on that, because that was a very active discussion. We'll talk more about that in a little bit.
This is Chrissy. I had a question. So when you say action taken, is it implied that a vote is being? So if you know, like at the retreat, if everybody's just meeting for dinner, and no vote is taken, then minutes would not have to be taken?
Correct.
Okay.
Because we're not doing board work.
Hey, Robert. Right? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just as an example, you guys come to my quinceañera, yay me, and we're hanging out because we're good friends. No minutes need to be taken critiquing the food that was served or the music played by the DJ. Right. Nancy.
Just looking at the various amendments in that section, all under transparency, I wonder if it makes sense to kind of look at them all.
Sure.
Take a, you know, and then just take one vote because they all seem to follow
the same spirit.
Yeah,
they're very much the same spirit. I don't want to shortchange them because I want a member to be able to say, I like this, but I don't like this. But okay, this one does have the same spirit. So let's move on. If that's okay with everyone, let's then group them together. So moving to section 8.6, meeting notes, subsection D, a notice of the meeting, including a copy of the agenda, shall be delivered to the membership at least a week before the meeting and later published on the association's website as soon as the meeting has been called. That's the agenda and outlining the plans for it, right? And this was a lively debate as well, as how much time is too much time? Should it be a month? Should it be a few days? We knew in good faith that we wanted enough time for things to happen. But in the second part, which is actually how this meeting that we're currently in kind of came up as well, in the event of an emergency meeting, membership will be notified as soon as possible prior to the meeting via the website. We talked about whether on social, whether on email. We didn't want to put into the bylaws specific platforms that might be outdated in the future, but at the very least on the website. This is the minimum, right? The purpose of the emergency meeting shall be stated. So that is, go ahead, questions.
I mean, so I understand, you know, social media, but would it be implied that all forms of communication will be using all, you know, not just the website, but Twitter and Facebook?
So perhaps in terms of the concept, and I don't believe the committee and subcommittee had like only the website in mind. So perhaps later published, it would be an emergency meeting notified, maybe we should say on all applicable platforms.
Because I feel like an email would be even better than the website, just because the website, no one's going to think to look at the website.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's also been traditionally the way that it's handled. If I'm not mistaken, the BA is pretty good about.
Right. No, and I'm not. I just for bylaw. I mean for.
Yeah, I think for
platforms idea, Robert, would be a good, you know, in all the appropriate platforms or something like that would actually be.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
you
can say communicate to the membership. You can say communicate to the membership, because that covers what Nancy's saying, that the very basic bottom line is we need to get this word out to the members, and we can do that through email.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to just tweak the language, because the spirit is communicate to the members. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Right. We had discussed in terms of our minutes enough. I think we'll get to that section, but the spirit is notify the members, give them ample time. Life is, sometimes things happen and we have to have an emergency meeting with shorter notice than a week. If that is the case, notify the membership as soon as possible and state why the meeting is an emergency meeting opposed to giving that ample notice. That's the spirit. So that's the concept there.
Hey, Robert, I got a quick question on this.
Please.
So just in terms of who defines that emergency meeting, is that an agreement by the board to define that emergency status? Is that a presidential decision? Is that executive board decision in terms of defining that in this new sort of iteration with this, declaring, alerting the membership of an emergency meeting specifically?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We didn't want to parse it in that way. I would say yes to all of the above. If we are going to have, if the outcome is a meeting of the board to discuss board matters, it doesn't matter who is causing or calling it to be a meeting that has a shorter time frame of notification, right? This is under a week. But if that is what is invoked as an emergency, then we need to be transparent and communicate to the membership why it's an emergency.
Copy.
Like in the case of this meeting, it became an emergency because we were supposed to have our board meeting for everything, and then we postponed the board meeting because the audit wasn't going to be ready, and then we forgot that we needed to discuss the amendment, so it became two separate meetings, and one of them ended up being an emergency because it was a shorter time frame.
Dino, I saw your hand. What's up?
Yeah, my recommendation is that the bylaws are not where we should stipulate the means of communication. Means of communication change a lot. We might be using TikTok next week.
Yep.
We might be using Twitter the following. I think that's more of a practice and policies and procedures issue and not a bylaws issue. Mm-hmm. To communicate in the most efficient way possible is as far as I would put the language in the bylaws, and let the policy and procedures be taken care of by the office with recommendation from the board.
But I think we can put that in the language that communicate to the members in an effective manner. That's probably the better language to use. And I would like to motion that I would like to see Dino on TikTok. No need to be seconded or voted because it would be unanimous.
I will second it.
But yeah, so that's a note, but let's talk about the concept.
For these, do you want these two grouped as one motion, or do you want the last included?
The whole group as one motion.
You think?
McNally?
Yeah, McNally says the whole group. Yeah, so the spirit of this section is all about transparency. But you know what? I'm gonna say the other part is about like minutes and bookkeeping. So let's do this one first. This one is about convening the meeting and actions taken on the meeting. Let's do this one as one group and do the other one as a second group, if that's okay. Unless the committee disagrees, I view them as different chunks, but bylaws committee, what do you think?
What does the subcommittee chair say?
I think that they're all related, but you guys want to vote on this one separately because it has to do with the quorum of the board. I will say that go ahead and do it, but
well, you pick.
You want me to pick?
Answers.
Well, why don't you guys go ahead? Okay, so why don't you guys go ahead and vote on this one?
Yeah.
The quorum section, because yes, it's transparency, but at the same time it deals with something different from the rest down below. So just go ahead and somebody wants to,
I'll move to go ahead and call the vote.
Who was that? Nancy?
Yeah.
All right, so Nancy makes a motion.
Geraldine seconds.
Hold on, let me just clarify. So this is for Article 5 amendment and Article, that's section 5.7 quorum, and Article 8 amendment, subsection 8.6. All right, just so everyone's clear. Those are the two that
Can you
were.
repeat that, please? Article 8.
Yes, Article 5, meetings of members, section 5.7, the quorum, and then the second one is Article 8, meetings of the board members, and the section is 8.6.
Yeah, new subsection C and new subsection D.
All right, so that's what we're going to be voting on. Any more discussion before we take the vote? All right, go ahead, Blanca.
Okay, Hugo Balta,
Yes.
Nick Valencia, Yvette Cabrera,
Yes.
Nancy San Martin,
Yes.
Geraldine Coles Azoka,
Aye.
Finn Gomez,
Aye.
Rafael Mejia,
Yes.
Robert Hernandez,
Yes.
Steve Solis,
Yes.
Monica Castillo, Melissa Macaya,
Yes.
Alwin Lopez,
Yes.
Nanette Sosa, Blanca Rios, yes, Johnny Cordova,
Yes.
Christy Fajardo,
Yes.
Angelica Serrano Roman. Angelica, you still there?
Uh-oh.
Maybe it's her connection.
You see her?
I see her in there, but her camera's off and her mic is off. So let's put her as not present.
I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the class, so yeah. It's okay. Let me mute.
We're actually
comparing. Oh, no problem. I have 2 Zoom meetings open. Yeah.
So you are yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so unanimous then.
All right, thank you. All right, so Robert, you want to go ahead into Article 11?
Yes. So moving down to 11 in terms of association books and records, and we'll loop it in with reports to membership. Just to read it here, section 11.1, subsection A, we are adding to the end of that section, I'll read the whole section. The association shall keep as permanent records the minutes of all proceedings and actions of members and of the board of directors and all committees thereof, and publish on the membership website or associate website, we're saying membership website or equivalent, records pertaining Board of Directors meeting minutes within 2 business days after the board approves them. Board of Directors meeting minutes shall include the voting records when the Board of Directors takes a vote. So that is in terms of keeping the records, when to publish them on the website within 2 days from the approval, and that it should include the results of voting. The next subsection B, we're adding to the end of it, but I'll read the entire section. The association shall maintain accounting books and records showing in reasonable detail the assets and liabilities and the receipts and disbursements of association. The new section is, the association shall publish on the website or equivalent all financial budgets and or statements approved by the board annually, annual audits and annual information returns, in parentheses, 990s, close parentheses, within 2 business days after such documents are completed and approved by the board. NHJ's website shall keep at least 5 years of such documentation. So again, this is about the finances and such, and documentation approved, reviewed and approved by the board. And we said at least 5 years. We debate 7 years, 10 years, and we went with 5 years because we know the outgoing treasurer has guaranteed that she's got 5 years for sure. We could just say commit to 7 years, but that is the thought there. And let me read this last one. Section 11.4, subsection B, we're putting this at the beginning. Annual financial statements. The association shall publish on the membership website or equivalent, that was the new language, rather than make available in the office, and provide to any member upon request the association's latest annual financial statements, including the statement of operations for and balance sheet as of the end of the year. One of the differences I should acknowledge is that in other parts we say the association website. In this part we're saying the membership. This is behind the membership wall. So you have to be a member of NAHJ in order to access these documents. And we're making these things accessible on the membership site rather than you have to go to a physical office and request a copy of these documentation. That's a grouping there. So I'm going to call this the document section for transparency. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
And I will add that this is how you show the membership how decisions are made. And you know, I sat on the board IRE, and you can go to the website. You can go back to the website and read the minutes when I was a board member, and I left the board on 2014, I believe. So this is how you show the membership how decisions are made, and you know how you explain, you know, what's happening with the organization, how the organization is serving you, you know, by them being able to look at the financial records. When I am looking at a company, that's the first thing that I'll go for. That's what I want to look at. So this is whole part of the whole transparency. And we, like I said before, we survey the membership and we specifically listed. And that was overwhelmingly number one, that they want this. So just a note.
Geraldine, I'd be interested in hearing from you and also Alberto.
That was my question. I mean, I've been part of the bylaws committee, and I read this a million times, but it just occurred to me now reading it last time that this might require putting it obviously behind the membership in the membership suite. And I don't even know if we have that capability of that would require for the association to purchase a different membership management system that would allow us to publish all those things. So maybe Janet or Alberto can clarify on that, specifically on the point for the documents behind the membership, in the membership suite, not on the website. Because, by the way, you know, the website has been updated and it's updated with the audited financials for the last 5 years, just FYI.
But not everything is there.
Yeah, have you checked the new website? Well, okay, that's for
I
something
just
else.
put it on the chat. Just check it.
Okay. So that'd be great to hear staff that chime in on that, or Alberto, to see if that is something that is not possible. We don't want to be asking something impossible, technologically speaking, or add an unreasonable burden to the staff. That was something we kept in mind as well.
Janet, you want to weigh in?
I think Janet's computer froze. I don't know if you want to wait for her. You want me to answer that? Yes, we're able to do that.
Okay.
That's easy nowadays. Yeah, I don't see why you would not be able to.
You never know, but thank you, Yunwen.
I guess.
No, like in the past, I mean, now, just for a little bit of background, we now have a better member management system that we did like 3 years ago. And it was very limiting. So I just wanted to triple check that what we were going to ask and put on the ballot was actually possible, because
it's
I know
reasonable
that different systems have different limitations. So I just wanted to triple check on that.
Thank you. Great. Other questions, comments?
I just wanted to say that I'm glad you addressed that, because my concern is for, you know, based on security and giving our members access, but while at the same time protecting this information, you know, that is part of our record from the greater public. And we already have transparency via the 990 forms, but the specifics like the annual audits that the membership should have access to, you know, that it be contained within a, you know, behind a wall that is accessible to the membership and not to the greater public. So that was my question.
And to be clear, anybody can look up our 990s online. That's the annual financial report. And then our audited financials are the official document that is available to everybody. So those two are always available.
But I'm sorry, Alberto, why you guys don't have the 990s on the new website? Because they're usually behind. The 990s that you see publicly that you can get from GuideStar and any of these websites, they're usually behind a couple of years. And you're able to see, I think, between depending on the website, 3 and 5 years.
990s are available as soon as the audit is available. And so what we're obligated to post technically are the audited financials. And those are posted.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns? All right. So if there's not any more questions or
who would like to make a motion? I think that's the
yeah. So if there's not any more questions, then we can go ahead and move to make a motion to place on the ballot Article 11. Do we have a motion?
I have a question. I just don't want to extend the meeting for too long, but I mean, what triggered this part of the document to be revamped? I don't think that's clear. I mean, we understand transparency, and yes, we all agree we want to be transparent. But what actually triggers? Is it a particular incident or just to be redundant?
No.
We wanted to, often with the spirit of a lot of these amendments, is to reaffirm and to clarify and to hold, really one of the things that we talked about is hold ourselves as accountable as we hold other organizations, and also be a model of what it should be. And so that's why we wanted to put in the bylaws. There's things that you might recommend, or if you as a president, that might be your purview, but transparency and making this accessible to the members is something that was a priority based on our discussion, based on the discussion from members giving us their feedback and priorities. I would say that, you know, there was anecdotally concerns about minutes not being posted on the website or being too difficult to find. So that's all those things together is what led to this section. Is that accurate for the other committee members?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you, Robert. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move to put this on the ballot.
Thank you, Nancy. Second?
I'll second it.
That was Johnny.
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, Blanca, you can take the roll call.
Okay. Hugo Balta,
Yes.
Nick Valencia, Yvette Cabrera,
Yes.
Nancy San Martin,
Yes.
Geraldine Coles Azocar. Geraldine? Oh, I think we could,
I think she got disconnected. Oh, she's coming back here. Let me admit her.
I could always go back to her. She may have.
Geraldine's audio is connecting now. Connected. Geraldine, do you vote in support? Or actually, Blanca, you ask.
Geraldine? Are you?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Uh,
Is it my turn to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, aye.
Finn Gomez,
Aye.
Rafael Mejia,
Yes.
Robert Hernandez,
Yes.
Steve Solis,
Yes.
Monica Castillo, Melissa Macaya,
Yes.
Alwin Lopez,
Yes.
Nanette Sosa, Blanca Rios, yes, Johnny Cordova,
Yes.
Christy Fajardo,
Yes.
and Angelica, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. It's unanimous.
All right. Thank you, Blanca. Anything else, Robert?
Let me pull up the document. Oh, no. Yeah, I think that is it in terms of our proposals. To talk about the next steps, so we need to get together with Janet to figure out how this will be presented onto the ballot. We had hoped that this would have happened 2 weeks ago, but here we are. So if Janet is still connected, we'll hang out, we'll get together immediately and put this onto the template of the ballot, which I believe gets sent out Monday at midnight. Those are the next steps, and then it's opened up to the membership to vote. Two-thirds of the members two-thirds of the voting membership must vote in affirmation for these bylaws to pass. I don't know, Janet, if there's anything else to add to that, or Alberto, or the process. But again, thank you to the committee for their incredible work. And I know their continued work and commitment, and to everyone for participating to put this onto the ballot. I feed this back to you.
Robert, this is Alberto, and I don't know if Janet's able to speak, but she and I are aware that she's going to be spending a lot of time on this in the next couple of days, including after the call. So she is expected to do everything she can. And I also want to just echo everybody's commitment and time for putting so much into this work. It's important. The bylaws had not been updated for a long time. And I think I really appreciate the fact that all of you have taken the time to do that. So Robert and committee, thank you.
Yes, on behalf of the board, I appreciate that and understand. I watched the video of the committee meeting, and I know that there was a lot of work behind even just getting to that point. So thank you for taking this on. I know it's not sexy work to do. It's complicated work, but it's important work, and the board had been discussing this, so we really appreciate the work that the committee put into this. If anyone has any other comments, let me know. Otherwise, I will close out the meeting now, but let me know. Anyone else want to make any comments from the board?
Good luck to everybody next week on election. Don't forget to vote.
Thank you,
Yeah, and
Gerald.
I also this is Christy, wanted to thank everybody who was on the bylaws committee. You guys did a lot of really good work. Some very good proposals. So thank you.
Me too, Yvette. I want to thank the committee for their time, their commitment, and their amazing job. Those ideas were amazing. So we are so happy that you guys did this. We want to keep working with you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your effort, and a student needs the right to vote, and thank you for that.
Thanks, Angelica. All right, it's 11:02 now, so I'm gonna close out. All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.